Okay, so welcome to the first in a series of blending tutorials. So the main intention with this is to help you guys learn how to use Blender, learn how to go through basic navigation, basic modeling through edge loops, extrusions, and other general kind of really essential basics for Blender. But to start off, we're going to just start with just basic navigation and to just figure out how to actually move around the space. So, um, in particular, in my case, in Blender, because I used to use a 3D modeling software called Maya, and that had drastically different navigation controls. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make two videos. This video is going to be how to navigate in Blender with Maya controls, and then I'm going to make a separate video which is how to navigate with the actual Blender controls, and then I will leave up to you guys to kind of decide what you find more favorable in terms of navigation. So, with navigating Blender, to even start navigating it in a different key map, what we want to do, we're going to have our taskbar right at the top here. We want to press Edit, we want to press Preferences. We then want to go all the way down to the key map option, and you're going to see at the top here there will be a drop down menu, and you'll have a couple options. You'll have Blender, Blender 27X, and you'll have Industry Compatible. So we want to ignore Blender 27X. We only really want to be using either Blender or industry compatible. And industry compatible is if you use other 3D modeling software before, this is kind of the way to ease you into Blender. So I tend to use industry compatible. So once you've selected that, we're now in Blender. A thing that most 3D modeling artists do when using Blender is just get rid of all of this. We don't need it whatsoever. So if you just click with the left mouse button and drag, and then you just press delete. And there we go. We don't need this anymore, but that's kind of irrelevant for what we're doing with navigation. So to begin with, the most important aspects of Blender navigation, the mouse button, the scroll wheel for the mouse button, just zoom in and zoom out. And there you go. You've now zoomed in and zoomed out of Blender. So using the industry compatible key map, to navigate and rotate around the space, you hold down the Alt key, so that's ALT, bottom left of the keyboard, and then whilst you're holding down Alt, you left click and you orbit around the space. There we go. So if I just, for example, add in a primitive shape here, doesn't matter what. So there we go. And if we hold down Alt and left click, we're now orbiting around that shape. And it's nice and easy. It's as simple as that, just navigating around there. Cool. Awesome. Right. Okay. So to since we now navigated around a 3D space successfully, we're now going to figure out how to rotate, scale, and move our models. Now, again, this is completely different if you do this with the industry compatible layout or if you do this with the Blender layout. So, with the industry compatible layout, once you've got your primitive object right here, we're going to move it. And the way you move it is either by using this gizmo here, and each of these lines represents a different axis. So you obviously, the green is your y-axis, so this moves it alongside like that. Your red axis, or the x-axis, moves it alongside like that. And your blue axis, the z-axis, moves it up and down. And there you go, that's very easy. So you can use the gizmo here, and you can use the gizmo here, and you can kind of rotate around like that as well if you think if you would prefer to use that. But to just kind of use hotkeys and remembering different important hotkeys for Blender. So to move, to go back between your scale, rotate, and move, it's W. So if you want to try and use an analogy, it's like W for walking. So you press W on your keyboard, and it's going to immediately put you into object. It's going to put you into the movement tool. So we can move it, like say, on the different axes, and you can also just kind of free move it if you really want by just holding down the circle in the middle here, and does whatever you want. Cool. So that's moving an object. Dead simple. So the next is scaling this object up and down. So what we can do here is if we press R, you're going to see that this has now got a circle around. So if we go back to we go back to movement mode, that hasn't got a circle around it. So if we press the R key, we are going to see that there is a circle. And what you want to do, you want to hold down, you want to click that circle, and you want to move it outwards. And that scales all the way up, and you can also scale it all the way down, as small as you want. So that's again essentially the fundamentals of it. You'll also see that the gizmos have changed from arrows down to squares. So it works the same way. So if we hold down the y-axis gizmo and we drag it, it moves it along sideways. If we hold down the x-axis, it moves it along sideways in the opposite direction. And if we press blue, it moves it upwards in the z-axis. So that's now moving an object, that's now scaling an object, and the last step is to rotate the object. So the last step for rotating is obviously movement is W, scaling is R, and rotating is T. So it's quite easy. Um, and you'll see now, obviously, each different time the gizmos are changing into something new. So when we press T, we kind of have a bunch of circular gizmos, and again, these colors represent each different axis, and that represents how we can rotate them. So if we move it along the x-axis, we can see that it rotates like this. Alongside the y-axis, it rotates like this, and of course the blue axis, it will just move it sideways. And there you go. That's the three fundamentals of moving an object, rotating an object, and scaling an object. So that's really nice and simple. Just another point of note, if you would prefer in any capacity to kind of snap move these or move these along the grid, basically meaning instead of kind of moving it around like this, it kind of moves in integers, so it moves kind of quite uniformly. All you do, you just press the magnet button up here that says snap, and then you'll see that's now moving alongside a grid. And you can see the movements are quite staggered and they're quite small, but you see when I move them slightly along, you see that they're actually snapping to the nearest circle. And that again, this is just really good for when you want to make things kind of nice and flush. Make it really nice and neat. Excellent.